Hi, welcome back to the channel. Rise of Skywalker came out last week, and I wanted to give a rundown of the Star Wars movies from my least favorite to my favorite. So we're going through 11 to 1. I'm not going to include the Star Wars Clone Wars movie because that was just a cash grab. That would obviously be my least favorite. So before I start, please let me know your rankings down below. Number 11 is Star Wars Episode 8. I think this movie is the least Star Wars to me. It just doesn't feel right about it. And there's so many flaws when it comes to just movie making that this movie does. And even just certain rules that Star Wars follows that this breaks. We can talk about the gravity thing where lasers are curving in space and bombs just falling straight down. And I know they came out and said that they were magnetized bombs, but still it is kind of annoying that there's those flaws in the movie, and now they're having to kind of afterwards say, hey, this is why. I think this movie ruins Luke's character. I don't think this is my Luke Skywalker. I don't think this is really anybody's Luke Skywalker. And I think this movie's intention was to subvert all the expectations that everyone had, but it didn't do it well enough and it didn't earn anything. And honestly, I just think by subverting expectations, you are not improving your story, you are actually making it worse. And you're putting episode 9 in a rougher spot because of what you were setting up. You kind of scrapped the whole movie or the whole storyline that Force Awakens was throwing or putting up, and you are replacing it with your kind of storyline. And just overall, I think Leia just immediately having force power was weird. And I think really the only good thing from this movie is how visually stunning it is. And I do like the Kylo Ren and Rey Force FaceTime. That's what I'm going to call it. And that they can affect stuff where they are. So Kylo can reach out and touch something, and it's there for him as well. You have the whole Canto Bite scene, which I think is a really bad scene, and I think this movie focuses on too much ideologies and doesn't produce good movie. And I think the Rose character is one of the worst characters in the history of Star Wars. This movie had more political agendas than a good story, and I really think it does affect it. So number 10 is Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Obviously, I think this probably has the worst dialogue of any Star Wars movie. And I think what really affects this movie for me is Darth Maul is not a strong character in this movie. The final battle, the final fight with Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, and Darth Maul really has no stakes to it when they're fighting because I don't care about Darth Maul, and he's not that menacing to me. He barely speaks in the movie, and it's just overall really damaging to the final fight. I think Qui-Gon is an interesting character and a decent character, but I don't think he's anything special, and I do think young Anakin is more annoying than me actually liking him. But obviously, Obi-Wan Kenobi being a standout, I do like Ewan McGregor in the movie. And I think the midichlorians and just kind of that whole idea that George Lucas was providing is a bad idea. It's just weird to introduce that. And honestly, the only thing that really makes me watch this movie is the fight scenes because they're very choreographed, and I do like that. So number 9 is Solo Star Wars movie. I don't think this movie should have gotten so much flack. Obviously, it came out right after The Last Jedi, and so everyone who hated that kind of just hated on Solo, and I don't think it deserved that. Obviously, Han Solo is a hard character to replace. Obviously, Harrison Ford is Han Solo to us, but I think Alden did a really great job for what he was given, and I do think Ron Howard, who eventually came in to finish directing the movie, really made a solid and decent movie. Obviously, Alden's Han Solo is hard to get used to at first, but 5 minutes in, you're fine. But I do think some of the dialogue is messy, and the themes are constantly changing, and there's too many tone changes to really call this a great Star Wars movie. I do love the action scenes, and the feel by the end for me is that Alden did a good job playing Han Solo. Also, Emilia Clarke's character arc is interesting with her being on Maul's side and him showing up at the end. So overall, I think it's a really solid Star Wars movie that people should really watch if you haven't and give it a chance. Number 8 is Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. I think this movie was very interesting because one, you have Finn's beginning arc with him being a stormtrooper and then turning to the light side. We've never seen that before, or him turning to the resistance. We've never seen that before. That is an interesting, new, fresh take. In this movie, Kylo Ren is very interesting, and obviously he is more of a Darth Vader wannabe in this movie, but they do set up some cool character moments for him, obviously with him being very angry and having the rage inside of him and being impulsive, and just wanting to show how good he is. Rey's definitely a Mary Sue in this, the fact that she's able to kind of do everything. She's really had no lightsaber training, and in the movie she beats Kylo, who's been trained by Snoke. So I do think that is kind of a mark on the movie. And obviously, just overall, it is kind of a retelling of the original trilogy. Obviously, the beginning's more like A New Hope with the new characters. You have the middle, which is on a snow planet, which is kind of like Hoth. And then in the end, you have the really emotional battle, like episode 6. But the humor also doesn't land as much, and is very safe. The movie plays it very safe in that sense. The story is very safe, and like I said before, it's definitely just kind of redoing what the original trilogy did. So number 7 for me is Star Wars Attack of the Clones. Obviously, Kenobi and Anakin's relationship is a real plus in this movie, and I do think that really helps the prequels and why I actually watch them a lot. I think their relationship's really strong in this movie. I do like the tone of the film, especially the first kind of hour or so, and it's kind of like a political thriller with, Padme being almost assassinated, and they're doing that whole city chase scene, and, obviously setting up Jango Fett later on. But bad dialogue really hurts the prequels, and that is a problem. There's so many things in this movie with the dialogue that just irks me. You have the whole Padme and Anakin romance in this movie that just doesn't work for me. I do gotta say, I do like Anakin going and killing everyone when his mother dies. I do think, showing that rage that he has inside of him is a really interesting character moment for him and sets up the third movie nicely. Overall, it's a fun movie, and showing Boba and Jango Fett being in the movie is a plus, and Jango being the reason for the clones. Count Dooku is a solid villain, and obviously the fight on Geonosis is really solid too. But it's always looked ugly to me. So that is my thoughts on Attack of the Clones. Number 6 is Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Obviously, this being a prequel to A New Hope, we kind of didn't know what was going on when the movie was coming out. It's a very interesting concept, and I think this is the best looking Star Wars movie Disney has made. It's so gorgeous, and I do think some of the characters are somewhat interesting, but overall I don't care for the characters as much. So in the finale where they die, I kind of don't care. Tarkov's a meh villain. He's very imposing, but I just don't think it really lands for me. And I think K2 is a very interesting character, and I wish he would continue. The last 25 minutes, though, are really what makes this movie stand out. It is coherent, it's solid, and it's very thrilling. And it very much holds this movie up. And then the Darth Vader scene at the end was really solid as well, kind of tying it back. So into our top 5. Number 5 for me is Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. Nostalgia kills this movie. As I rewatch it every time, I dislike it even more. I just don't think it holds up. And honestly, this is the Star Wars movie I watched the least behind Last Jedi. I just don't care for this one. I never have, even when I was younger. I would always watch Episode 5 or 6. Or Episode 3 over these, or over this movie. I just never cared for this. I do think it's a really solid movie, and it does set up this huge saga. But overall, I just think the movie is very, I guess you could say boring. It's not as action-packed, and I do think the dialogue is really bad here. Overall, it's just kind of meh for me, but I would still watch it over a lot of the other movies later on in the list. So number 4 is the newest Star Wars, Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. I think this is the most fun I've had watching a Star Wars movie in a long time. It has great action with amazing lightsaber fights. I gotta say, the areas that they bring us to, like the snowy planet where Poe's love interest is, that is such a cool area that, and Babu Frick's obviously there. I want to see more of that. I like these snowy environments. Love that Rey's a Palpatine. I was kind of calling that a while ago. And they give a good reason for why she's so strong, if you believe it. Obviously, at the end, spoiler alert, by the way, Palpatine says all the Sith are in him, and then Rey has all the Jedi in her. So it kind of gives a reasoning to why she's a Mary Sue, and especially her being a Palpatine and Palpatine being so powerful. Do I buy Palpatine having a kid? No, not really. It's kind of weird. And obviously it was just kind of spur of the moment. They had to just put it out there. And I don't think this is the original plan for her parents. But I do think it's a solid entry. The comedy lands, and it's not Marvelized. That's the term I use. Marvel has very dumb humor, and this movie got rid of that. The second and third act are absolutely thrilling. Obviously, the final act with the ship battle, and it's very much like episode 6, don't get me wrong, with Palpatine, saying, hey, look, your friends are about to die, strike me down. Chewie and C-3PO's deaths being teased and then not happening really, I think, affects this movie. When Chewie died, I think it would have been interesting to have Rey be the reason why he died, and that affecting her and causing her to become more on the dark side path. Then her changing back to the light side at the end would really be more emotional, and realizing it's not her fault. I feel like that would have had a more emotional impact. And you will need to accept a lot going into this movie, the new force powers and how strong Rey is. But I gotta say, this was a really solid entry, and I had a blast watching this. So number 3 is Star Wars Episode 5, Empire Strikes Back. I know this is a lot of people's favorite, so I'm gonna get a lot of flack. Obviously, let's talk about the pros. Han's and Leia's relationship's a real plus. The Hoth fights are stunning and are technically amazing considering the time that the film was made. It has obviously one of, if not the best movie twist ever, with Darth Vader saying he's Luke's father and that whole conundrum. Dagobah scenes kind of dragged for me. I never really cared for those. Honestly, when I was younger, I didn't really understand them, but now understanding what it meant, it does hold emotional weight, but I just never cared for those. And I do feel like Bespin, when they go there, is a really stale city, and honestly, I don't care for that whole part of the movie. I feel like it could just be thrown out. And then Han being frozen in carbonite is a pretty emotional moment, but doesn't hold weight because it, finishes in the next film. So number 2 is Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. This is, I think, the second most emotional Star Wars movie for me. Obviously with Anakin turning, and obviously it is a bit rushed, but I think with the fights in this movie and just the overall dialogue, it is a very big step up, and it's the most fun Star Wars movie to watch if you're getting into it. It is really fun to watch, and obviously Anakin killing those kids and his whole story arc and reasoning for turning are really solid. If you don't agree with him, I get it, but it is a really solid arc and why he's turning. Obi-Wan and Anakin's friendship is very unique and obviously the best part of the story, and when they fight and Anakin turns, it makes it more emotional. The lightsaber parts and the battling, especially at the end, are fantastic and still probably the best in the series. But still, the dialogue is rough in spots, and like I said, Anakin's turn is a bit rushed, and Mace Windu dying, kind of what the fuck, and obviously the ending with Darth Vader going, no, was kind of a drag, but I gotta say this is a really solid entry by George Lucas. So, there's one left. My favorite Star Wars movie, obviously, is Star Wars Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. I'll start off with the bads. Boba Fett dying right off rip kind of sucks. But I do gotta say this movie builds up intensity with Jabba the Hutt's palace, and then Luke falling into the pit and fighting off the monster. That's really thrilling. And then when they go out to the sand dunes and stuff, that whole scene of them kind of sitting there waiting for the lightsaber to shoot out from R2-D2 and that buildup is really thrilling. That whole scene where they're escaping is great. It's great at building intensity, and it's overall a great fight. Leia in a bikini, come on. And then killing Jabba, obviously. The space battle towards the end of the movie is, I believe, to be one of the best space battles, if not the best, in the series, and maybe in movie history. It's so solid, it's so entertaining, it's so fun. And I think what really helps this movie is the final kind of battle between Luke and Vader still holds so much emotional value and is still one of the most impactful moments in movie history, with Darth Vader turning and helping his son. His son's willing to die to say, I'm not turning to the dark side. I'm going to let the resistance fall. Please help me, Father. And he does. So Vader's turning, obviously one of the best moments. And then at the end, where they are at the kind of party celebration, he looks over and he sees Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Anakin. Great scene. Obviously, people don't like the Ewoks. I don't mind that. I actually like that whole setup. But, I guess you like what you like. So those are 11 through 1. Let me know your rankings. Let me know what you think of my rankings. Please make sure to like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you on the next video.